We all carry things. Emotional luggage, mental clutter, beliefs that once made sense, but now keep us confined in patterns we've long outgrown. Letting go isn't about forgetting where you came from or denying what happened to you. It's about refusing to let your past define your capacity to grow. The truth is, many people are stuck not because they lack ability, talent, or potential, but because they're holding on to too much of what no longer serves them. Growth demands space, and space requires release. You can't plant something new in soil already full of weeds. You can't step into a future with hands gripping the past. Yet so many of us do exactly that. We try to carry the old version of ourselves into new seasons, new goals, new relationships, expecting progress, while dragging pain, resentment, regret, and outdated narratives behind us. That's not growth. That's survival. And survival was never the end game. You were meant to expand. Letting go starts with awareness. You have to get honest about what's really taking up space in your life. That means confronting your patterns, the excuses you've rehearsed so often they feel like truth. The self-talk that keeps you playing small. It means looking at the relationships you keep out of habit, not alignment. It means asking hard questions. Am I doing this because it supports who I am becoming? Or because I'm afraid of what happens if I stop? Sometimes the things we need to release are the very things we've used to protect ourselves. It kept you safe when you felt unheard. That doubt. It gave you an excuse not to try so you wouldn't have to face failure. That identity you've been wearing. The one built on proving yourself, earning love, or avoiding conflict, it helped you survive. But you're not here just to survive anymore. You're here to evolve. And that means making peace with the past without making it permanent. To grow, you must be willing to let go of what's familiar, but no longer fruitful. Familiar isn't the same as right. Just because you've always thought a certain way doesn't mean it's the only way. Just because someone's been in your life a long time doesn't mean they're meant to walk with you into your next chapter. Some people are assignments, not life partners. Some habits were useful in the struggle, but become dead weight in the season of building. Some beliefs were inherited, not chosen. And now it's time for you to choose. And yes, letting go is uncomfortable. There's grief in it. Grief for the version of you that settled, that stayed quiet, that waited for permission. Grief for the years spent proving something to people who never truly saw you. Grief for the comfort zone that was holding you back while pretending to keep you safe. But growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens when you dare to release what's been, to make room for what could be. You have to be willing to stand in the empty space before the new thing arrives, before the breakthrough, before the confirmation. That space is sacred. That's where transformation begins. Not in the doing, but in the undoing. Not in the addition, but in the subtraction. Because what you let go of defines you just as much as what you pursue. It's in the shedding of the unnecessary that your real self starts to emerge. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Letting go isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every day you wake up and ask yourself, what weight am I choosing not to carry today? What lie am I choosing not to repeat? What story am I choosing to rewrite? The process isn't linear. Some days you'll feel light and free. Other days, the past will try to sneak back in, whispering old fears in your ear. That's okay. Growth isn't about perfection. It's about progress. And progress only comes when you give yourself permission to release. The world we experience externally is often a mirror of the world we carry within. Chaos outside tends to echo chaos inside. Noise in your environment often reflects the noise in your thoughts. And yet, So many of us are focused on cleaning up everything around us, our careers, our homes, our bodies, while leaving our inner world overflowing with mental clutter, emotional baggage, and unresolved tension. We tidy up our desks, but leave our minds in disarray. We organize our calendars, but our hearts remain tangled in confusion, fear, and overthinking. Decluttering your inner world is not just about feeling better. It's about clearing the path so the real you can step forward. Most people live in a constant state of distraction. Their heads are full before the day even begins. Worry about what could go wrong. Regrets over what already did. Voices of criticism they picked up years ago, and noise from 100 different sources demanding their attention. If your mind feels loud, heavy, and restless, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you've never been taught to clear the space where peace and clarity can live. We're taught to collect information, not to release what no longer serves us. We're taught to fill ourselves with knowledge, achievement, and other people's opinions. But rarely are we taught to create stillness. Clarity does not come from thinking harder. It comes from thinking less. Not in the sense of being passive or disengaged, but in the sense of turning down the volume on everything that doesn't matter. When your mind is packed with noise, even the truth can't be heard. You'll miss the quiet wisdom inside you. The instincts, the knowing, the pull toward what is right for you. Because it's buried under the debris of overthinking, unresolved emotion, and inherited narratives that don't even belong to you. Sometimes your greatest breakthroughs don't come from adding more insight, but from subtracting the mental junk that's been clogging your vision. Decluttering your inner world requires presence. You can't fix what you refuse to notice. You have to start paying attention, not just to your thoughts, but to the patterns they create. Notice how quickly you jump to the worst case scenario. Notice the way you talk to yourself when no one's listening. Notice what triggers your anxiety, what fuels your guilt, what tightens your chest. And don't judge what you find. Observe it. Understand it. Only then can you begin to release it. You can't let go of what you won't even acknowledge. There are conversations you need to stop rehearsing. People you need to stop trying to impress. Versions of yourself you need to stop performing. It's exhausting to live a life dictated by noise that isn't yours. Emotional clutter is just as heavy as physical clutter. Sometimes heavier, because it's invisible. The weight of self-doubt, the fog of confusion, the grip of unprocessed pain. These are the things that rob you of your energy, your direction, and your ability to feel grounded. You don't need more answers. You need fewer distractions. And distraction doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it wears the mask of business. Sometimes it's perfectionism. Sometimes it's a need to always be on, always be productive, always be chasing. But when your mind never rests, your soul never breathes. If you want to experience clarity, you must create space for it to land. That means disconnecting from the noise of comparison. That means being willing to sit with your thoughts long enough to sort what is true from what is simply loud. That means giving yourself permission to not have it all figured out and trusting that clarity often comes in silence, not in striving. You don't need to fix every thought. You don't need to win every internal battle. You just need to clean the room. Remove the dust of old conversations. Sweep out the corners of your mind where fear hides. Open the windows of your heart and let some fresh air in. Let go of needing all the answers right now. Create space. Not because you know what's coming, but because you know something better can't enter a crowded room. Your peace is buried under the noise. Your power is buried under the noise. Your purpose is buried under the noise. You're not lost. You're just cluttered. And the moment you begin to clear that space, the moment you begin to hear your own voice again, that's when the shift begins to happen. There's a voice inside of you that's been whispering since the beginning. You've heard it in quiet moments, in restless nights, in the stillness between distractions. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, but it never goes away. It's the voice that says you were made for something greater, that your current circumstances are not the full picture of your potential. And maybe you've ignored it. Maybe you've silenced it with logic, drowned it with business, or pushed it aside because life told you to be realistic. But deep down, you've always known that voice is right. From an early age, you may have been taught to settle, to be practical, to not ask for too much. You learned how to shrink yourself so others wouldn't feel threatened. You learned how to hide your dreams behind a mask of politeness, how to play small so you wouldn't make waves. You learned how to aim low and call it humility. But none of that changes the truth that has been living inside you all along. You were meant for more. Not more in terms of possessions or praise, but more in terms of impact, authenticity, and becoming fully alive in your purpose. The problem is, we live in a world that teaches us to measure ourselves against everything but our own inner compass. We're trained to compare, to compete, to perform. We chase after what looks successful instead of what feels aligned. We try to fit into boxes that were never built for us, and then we wonder why we feel empty even when we're achieving. But real fulfillment doesn't come from external validation. It comes from knowing you're living in alignment with who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. You were not put here just to exist. You were not meant to go through life on autopilot, checking boxes and suppressing your fire. That fire, the one that feels inconvenient, that burns for something bigger, that keeps you awake with desire for more meaning, more truth, more depth. That fire is your guide. It's not a mistake. It's not foolish. It's not something you outgrow. It's your calling trying to reach you through the noise of daily life. And it's time to stop dismissing it. There is nothing noble about playing small. There is nothing virtuous about denying your gifts. The world does not benefit from you staying invisible. If anything, it suffers. Because when you withhold the fullness of who you are, you rob the people around you of the light you were meant to shine. You don't just owe it to yourself to rise. You owe it to the purpose that brought you here. You owe it to every version of you that fought to survive, to hold on, to believe that something better was possible. You owe it to the people who will be set free because you decided to show up as your whole self, living as if you were meant for more. Is not arrogance. It's obedience to your potential. It's the refusal to live below your capacity just because comfort is familiar. It's the decision to stop shrinking into the expectations of others and start expanding into the truth of who you really are. You weren't meant to blend in. You weren't meant to stay where you started. Growth is your birthright. Evolution is your responsibility. And greatness is not reserved for the chosen few. It's reserved for the ones who answer the call. When you choose to believe that you were meant for more, you begin to move differently. You speak with more conviction. You make decisions with more clarity. You stop settling for what's available and start pursuing what's aligned. You begin to act like your life matters, like your time means something, like your voice was meant to be heard. And even if no one else understands it yet, even if the people around you still see the old version of you, that's okay. Because this journey isn't about being recognized. It's about becoming. You don't need to wait for a sign. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to see the whole path before you take the first step. You only need to trust that the longing inside of you is there for a reason. You are not broken, unworthy, or too late. You are becoming. And the very fact that you feel the pull for something more means that more is meant for you. There's a lie that has been told so often. It's accepted as wisdom. That lie says you have time. That tomorrow is guaranteed. That one day you'll be ready. That once everything is in place, you'll finally begin. But the truth is, waiting is the greatest thief of momentum. Every time you delay, every time you convince yourself that later is better, you plant your potential in the soil of hesitation. And potential can only grow where action is taken. People don't fail because they lack dreams. Most people have dreams so big they're afraid to say them out loud. They don't fail because they lack talent either. What keeps people stuck is waiting for the perfect conditions. Waiting to feel confident. Waiting to have it all figured out. Waiting for approval, for permission, for the fear to disappear. But action doesn't begin after fear leaves. Action is what moves you through the fear. The people who change their lives are not the ones who had a master plan. They're the ones who got tired of standing still, who woke up one day and decided that progress, however messy, was better than perfection postponed. They're the ones who chose to take the first step before they saw the whole staircase. They're the ones who said, I don't know exactly where this will lead, but I know I can't stay here any longer. There is power in that decision. There is transformation in that kind of movement. We overestimate how much we can plan and underestimate how much we can shift just by taking one bold step. A single phone call, a single yes, a single rejection faced instead of avoided. A single moment where you choose to move instead of analyze. That's the moment when everything begins to change. Not because the outside world shifts instantly, but because your inner posture does. You stop living as a passive observer of your life and start owning the fact that you are a creator in it. The longer you wait to start, the heavier the task becomes in your mind. The more you overthink it, the more you start building a wall of doubt around something that only needed a door of courage. You think of every way it could go wrong, every reason you might fail, every limitation that stands in your way, and all of that becomes a fortress around your desire. But when you act, you break the illusion. You see that the fear was louder than the reality, that the resistance was mental, not permanent. That motion creates clarity in a way thinking never will. You're not waiting for the right moment. You're delaying out of fear. And fear has many disguises. It shows up as procrastination, as perfectionism, as excuses dressed in logic. But underneath all of that is the same root, the fear that you are not enough, that you will start and stumble, that you will try and not be recognized, that you will want it badly and still fall short. But what if the stumble is where your strength begins? What if the rejection clears a better path? What if falling short is not a failure, but the step that finally teaches you how to rise? Action doesn't guarantee success, but inaction guarantees regret. And regret is far heavier than any failure. The pain of discipline is sharp, but temporary. The pain of regret is dull, but endless. And if you keep putting off what your soul is pulling you toward, you will reach a point where the pain of staying the same becomes louder than the fear of change. You don't need to leap all the way. You just need to move. Forward is forward, no matter how small the step. And momentum builds in motion. Waiting doesn't teach you anything new. It only keeps you in rehearsal. And no matter how perfectly you rehearse, the real growth only happens when the curtain rises and you step onto the stage, uncertain and alive. What matters is not how much you know, but how willing you are to begin without knowing it all. The door won't open because you're ready. It opens because you knock. The path won't appear because you planned it perfectly. It appears as you walk it. The courage won't rise because you waited long enough. It rises when you act in spite of its absence. You don't get brave before the action. You get brave in it. And the only moment that matters is the one you choose to use right now. There comes a point in your life when you can no longer pretend to be less than you are. You can no longer dim your light to make others comfortable. You can no longer keep editing yourself to fit into rooms that were never built to hold your greatness. The time comes when you stop negotiating with your truth, when you stop waiting for validation, and you finally decide to stand in your power. Not because you feel ready, but because you're tired of shrinking. Because you're exhausted from the weight of pretending. Because there is something in you that refuses to stay silent any longer. Power doesn't come from position. It doesn't come from titles, followers, degrees, or money. Real power is presence. It's the unshakable conviction that you have worth, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. It's knowing that your voice matters, even if it trembles. That your story matters, even if no one claps. That your dreams matter, even if no one else understands them. Real power is not about dominance. It's about alignment. It's about coming back to yourself after years of being pulled in 1,000 directions by other people's expectations, fears, opinions, and projections. You spend so much of your life being taught how to follow rules, how to fit into roles, how to say the right things and stay in line. You're taught to not be too loud, too bold, too ambitious, too emotional, too passionate. So you shrink. You quiet your voice, suppress your instincts, question your value. You trade authenticity for approval, thinking it's the price of belonging. But what you learn over time, what you begin to understand at your core, is that any version of belonging that requires you to abandon yourself is not belonging at all. Standing in your power means reclaiming the pieces of yourself you've been taught to hide. It means showing up fully, even if your voice shakes. It means owning your story, even the parts that still hurt. It means not waiting for someone to give you permission to be whole. There is no one coming to rescue you from invisibility. You must choose visibility, even when it feels vulnerable. You must step into the light, not because you're unafraid, but because you've decided that your truth is more important than your fear. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of hesitation. The version who walks into rooms with confidence, who sets boundaries without guilt, who leads with both heart and strength. That version is not a fantasy. That version is already within you, buried beneath layers of doubt, hesitation, and outdated conditioning. You don't have to create that self from scratch. You only have to uncover it. You only have to stop pretending that you don't already know who you are. The world has enough people playing it safe. Enough people speaking in half-truths. Enough people blending in so they don't get judged, criticized, or left behind. What the world needs is your full voice, your full brilliance, your full fire. It needs people who refuse to keep asking for permission to be powerful. It needs people who are willing to be misunderstood in order to be free. People who don't just talk about courage, but live it, who don't just dream about purpose, but walk in it. And standing in your power doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means fear no longer gets the final say. It doesn't mean you never feel doubt. It means you move anyway. It means you've stopped waiting to be chosen and have decided to choose yourself. It means you've stopped hoping someone else will open the door and have instead become the one who builds the door when none is offered. It's a shift from passivity to ownership, from silence to expression, from survival to expansion. You don't owe the world a watered down version of yourself. You don't have to apologize for taking up space. You don't have to wait until you're perfect to be powerful. You only have to be present, to speak when your heart says speak, to act when your gut says move, to stand when your old self would have backed down. Power isn't about pretending to have all the answers. It's about showing up anyway. It's about walking into your day with the quiet authority of someone who knows they belong here. Not because someone else said so, but because they decided to claim it for themselves. You are not who you were yesterday. And you don't have to carry that version of yourself into tomorrow. You are standing at the threshold of a new chapter, but it won't write itself. Growth demands intention. Transformation requires space. You must be willing to release what no longer fits, to clear the noise in your mind, to listen to the quiet call that tells you you were meant for more, not someday. Now, because the power to become isn't out there waiting to be discovered. It's already within you, waiting to be claimed. You create space for the new you by choosing in every moment to act with courage, live with clarity, believe in your worth, and stand without apology. Not when it's easy, not when it's perfect, but now, always now.